Welcome to another great edition of the Million Dollar Nugget. My name is Marty Dickinson, founder of Speakers Speak Group and Speakers Speak Live. I am so happy to have with me a longtime friend, Scott Friedman from Colorado National Speakers Association. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, Marty. Good to be with you again.
For those of you who do not know Scott, I want to give you a little bit of background about him, and then we're going to go into some real interesting stuff that you normally don't get to hear from other professional speakers. Hold on to that thought. So here we go. So Scott is a CSP. He is a past NSA president. He is the 2013 recipient of the Cavett Award. He is the co-founder since 2008, co-founder of TWCCTW.org, which stands for Together We Can Change the World. This organization is dedicated to improving the well-being of disadvantaged children and women in Southeast Asia. And most recently, I was so honored to be in the audience at the banquet at Influence, where he received the 2022 NSA Philanthropist of the Year Award. Congratulations, Scott.
Thank you. When
I was sitting in the audience, was it Nito that was introducing you? I'm trying to remember who was actually introducing you for that. He was going through this introduction and explaining what the award was and everything, and it got closer and closer and closer to sounding like they were talking about you, but he never said your name until the very end. And I was thinking, could it possibly be that Scott is getting this award? And sure enough, there you were. I had no idea you were going to receive this. Did you know in advance that this was all happening? Did they tell you?
I did, yes. I was actually in Thailand at the time when Nito called and let me know. And, yeah,
it was a beautiful moment for sure. And that is what we are going to talk about, is philanthropy within speaking and how professional speakers can get to a point where they start thinking about how to use what they've been doing in their career as a speaker and impact the world in a greater way. And no, I can't have any better example of that than what you're doing. So Scott, we want to, again, a lot of people have not heard of you. I bring a lot of people new to the speaking business into Speakers Speak Group. So we need to really give them some background about how this all evolves. I'd like my first question for you is just to give us your interpretation, because I know this must change over the years, of what led you to the speaking business at the very beginning. How did you get involved with this?
So 1985, actually 84, I met Cavett Robert, founder of the National Speakers Association, and Cavett was speaking at our downtown sister sales professionals organization, and I heard him speak and said, hey, how about speaking to our sales group tomorrow? I'll take you to the airport. He said, great. So on the way to the airport the next day, he told me that I had a unique style. As the president of the sales professional group at the time, I would summarize the speaker's talk in a humorous poem and start out with a little story. And so he told me I had a unique style and I should be a professional speaker. And at the time, I didn't realize he said that to everybody. So, by the time I figured it out, it was too late. I quit my current job at the time and went to work for a professional speakers company for about 6 months as their marketing director. And in 1985, I went full time. So it's been quite a few years. Yeah.
Beautiful. So there had to be some point where you started speaking on an international level. When did that begin?
99.
Okay. Did that have any influence in you starting to look to see what was happening in the world in a broader sense?
Not necessarily at that point. Really, most of my stories start with a girl or a woman. I was doing a program called What's So Funny About Being Single on a cruise ship in the 90s, and fell in love with a young Filipina. And I looked at the map and said, okay, how can I get over to the Philippines? And I had a friend that was working with the Singapore government at the time. I called Abe and I said, Abe, I think I've fallen in love. Can you help me get a program in Singapore? He said, sure. It took me about a year. By the time I got over there, she was married and pregnant. But I discovered Asia, and yeah, it was a wonderful thing. So I started really my overseas, or started working. I had my very first program with the Singapore government in 1999. So
1999. Wow. So just before we get into the philanthropic side of this, can you give a little overview of what the state of the speaking industry is over in that part of the world, in Malaysia and all the places that you speak out there?
So the Global Speakers Federation now has 17 associations under its banner, the largest being National Speakers Association of America. In Asia, they have the Professional Speakers Association of India, Professional Speakers Association of the Philippines, PAPS, MAPS, Malaysia Association of Professional Speakers, and APSS, Asia Professional Speakers of Singapore. So there's actually 4 associations within the Global Speakers Federation over there. The largest being Singapore, and that's really the most vibrant market in of the 4 that I mentioned. But it's alive and well. In fact, the Global Speaker Summit we do every 2 years. I'm the proud father of the Global Speaker Summit. When I was president of NSA in 2004, 2005, we had 300 speakers in Singapore for the very first, the inaugural Global Speaker Summit. But they just announced recently that the next one after Dublin, Ireland, will be in Bali. So it will be run by the Virtual Speakers Association, VSAI, Virtual Speakers Association International. But it'll be in Bali. So that I imagine it'll attract and will work very closely with those 4 associations in Asia. So,
right. Do you get the idea that people over in Malaysia, all the places that you're speaking over there, do you feel that the audiences are I don't know how to quite describe it. Are they excited to see speakers in general, or are they excited because you're from America and they want to see American speakers? Is there any differentiation that way?
I think it's both, really. I think the ideas from the West are still very well accepted in Asia and really all over the world. But there's a different hunger for learning, I find, over in that part of the world, where they're really eager to take the ideas home. And in America, if you're doing a seminar and you go over the time, people think, geez, what is wrong with this guy? I mean, he's not a professional. He was supposed to be done at 2 p.m. It's now 2:07. And in Asia, it just means that you're giving more value, that people really are hungry for those ideas. Wow. So yeah, it's nice. In most cases, they're really eager to hear you speak and learn new ideas. So
have you seen anything as far as speaking style or techniques that they have become more receptive to or even more expecting since COVID? Because we've certainly seen that here with the creation of Zoom and all the virtual and hybrid events that we're doing now. The approach to the audience has changed over the past even 2 or 3 years, let alone 5 and 10 years. Has that changed at all over in that part of the world?
I really believe it's the same all over the world. I mean, COVID didn't spare anybody. So it was, they went to Zoom just like we did. And I think as far as what techniques or, what works over in that part of the world, I think it really all comes down to 3 things, which is authenticity, vulnerability, and humility. That works over there just like it works here. And I think if you look at what and again, we're generalizing here, I think, obviously, but I think what you don't see as much of over there is probably the humility piece. Because they think, okay, I need to prove myself as a professional speaker, that I really own the right to be speaking in front of you. I own the platform. So I think that's a piece that just, the self-effacing humor piece, that they're not too ready or willing or to poke fun at themselves quite yet in many cases. And some have figured it out. And I think that's a really big piece to being a successful speaker, is to come from a place of humility.
Yeah, that's a great segue into talking about the whole philanthropy side of things. So there must have been a point, some sort of a pivotal point where you either realized you wanted to do something on a more giving type of level, or something where you first thought of speaking to be able to bring something more to the world. What was that moment that you decided, I really should think about putting something together that really benefits the world? When did that happen?
I think I come from a family of philanthropists, number one. So I really, have to give credit to my upbringing and the fact that I think if we're given resources in our lives and we're members of the Lucky Gene Club, and I think Speakers from America, or most just being American ourselves, we're members of that Lucky Gene Club. So I think it's our personal responsibility to give back and make life better for other people coming from that club. So that's probably the foundation of it. Second, I was speaking in Cambodia in 2007. The financial crisis was just happening, and Sean Dolan is the man's name, who was a senior VP at the time of Alcatel-Lucent. And as senior VP, he took his 100 top leaders in Asia Pac to Phnom Penh, Cambodia. And he said, our stock prices may be falling, but there's a lot more important things in the world than falling stock prices. And I'm going to show you what they are. So I spent 3 days with them in Phnom Penh, and we spent one day in the killing fields and saw what happened to the Cambodian people after the Vietnam War. Then a little bit of time passed, and then they ended up in the Pol Pot regime, where they killed a lot of the educated people in Cambodia, which similar to the what went on in Auschwitz and their and just, obviously going through that experience is gut wrenching. And then we spent the next day building houses with an organization called Tabitha. And I was just so touched, and I didn't really know the history at the time. And I just thought, what, it's time we do something. I do something on a bigger scale. And so Jana Stanfield and I, and Jana had been working over in Asia for quite some time as well, and had been serving orphanages in Bali, Indonesia. And we said, what would be fun? Let's take a group of speakers over. We'll find a promoter, so we'll have our wake sponsored at least, and let's do some leadership conferences, and let's see if we can raise some money for some good causes. So our very first tour was in 2008. We had 6 people on that tour, and we had a sponsor promoter out of Bangkok, Thailand. So we did programs in Bangkok and Kuala Lumpur. We identified some orphanages that needed some help, and then we raised some money, and we had such a good time doing it. It was so meaningful. We thought, this is something that we should probably do again. And thus really was born Together We Can Change the World. So.
Wow, that's such an awesome story. So how many times a year do you do this tour?
We do it 2 times a year. At first we were doing it 1 time a year. Let's see, how many years have we been? Of course, COVID, we didn't do it during the 2 years of COVID. We tried to do it online as successfully as possible. But we do 2 tours a year. We just did our 21st tour. So I just got back basically from Malaysia and Cambodia for our 21st tour.
And how many speakers do you bring with you now on these tours?
Usually we limit it to 15. So
that's more than I thought. 15 speakers. Okay.
Yeah, this year, well, it's funny. We lost a few before we started, and then we lost a few more in Kuala Lumpur to COVID. But we did have thankfully in Kuala Lumpur, we had a leadership conference with 550 people showed up. So, and at that time, nobody had COVID, but I think it ended up being one of those super spreader events, unfortunately. And so we lost 3 of our own that did not travel with us to Cambodia. So we had 8 with us in Cambodia. So.
Were they okay? I mean, when you say you lost them, you mean they were just dropped from the roster, right?
No, they're gone. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, sorry. I mean,
you never know.
And I probably shouldn't tease about that. I mean, thankfully we're at the place now where if you're vaccinated, you're not really at a huge risk. So yeah, they're fine. So
Awesome, awesome. So just I'm trying to make the crossover to how the tour and the speaking turns into a philanthropic opportunity. So you get funding from sponsors to go over there and speak. You have the conference. Do you sell tickets to these conferences? Do the sponsors support the entire event? How does that work?
So each speaker, in order to come on the tour, has to do a fundraiser of at least $1,500.
Ah,
So let's say we have 10 speakers, and that raises $15,000, at least $15,000, and usually a lot of those fundraisers go over that amount. Then we have sponsors that also give some money or sponsor in kind, like hotels, where we'll do training while we're there for free lodging, basically. And then we do sell tickets, and we raise pretty decent money depending on the size of the audience, Kuala Lumpur being our biggest audience. And last time we did it, we raised $20,000. $10,000 went to our causes, and $10,000 went to our partners' causes that really does all the legwork on those conferences, or on that conference in Kuala Lumpur. So and then we have about 20 causes, but we've identified 5 causes that we really keep up with and continually sponsor every year with more resources than we would the other 15 causes. So, we try to do as much good as we possibly can with the money that we raise. And our goal is to raise $100,000 a year. And we're not quite at that goal. And we felt quite short the last couple of years with COVID. But
yeah. What's just from this last tour? I'm sure you have 21 tours. I'm sure you have plenty of stories, but just kind of, again, we're a family of speakers. Anybody who's going to be watching this is within the Speakers Speak group family. And so we're all sort of on the same path of speaking and bringing a message to the world. And a lot of our newer speakers, they're thinking, well, if I was to ask them, what do you want? What do you want to do as a speaker? They're going to say, well, I want 100 speaking gigs next year, and I want to spend this much time on the road. I want to go to, the Caribbean or do a cruise and, all this stuff. And the last thing they're thinking about, at least from my experience, people that I talk to one-on-one to find out where they want to go so that I can assist them in doing that, the last thing on the list, if it even comes up in conversation, is that they want to support a nonprofit or a charity or have some ambition of starting something that can contribute in that way. So is there some kind of an example you can give to inspire speakers to put this in their golf bag, to put this in their checklist of to-dos that they want to add somewhere in their career and in their life to do something on a bigger scale? I guess that's the way to approach.
My experience of NSA and professional speaking, and given that it was founded by Cavett Robert, who comes from that place of abundance and really give away your trade secrets and help people become as successful as they possibly can, that really people do come from that spirit of abundance and do want to make a difference. So I think, and you look at so many people involved in so many good causes within NSA. So hopefully somewhere in the back of their mind, they're thinking, what makes sense for me to give back? I think we attract the kind of speaker that wants to move from success to significance in their careers. So we get a fair amount of those that say, okay, this is a great way. I want to see Asia. I've never been before. And then others also want to come because they want to give back, but because they want to develop the Asian market. And the fact that we get in front of these big audiences that are made up of HR directors and C-suite people from many different organizations, it has opened up many careers for professional speakers in that world. So it's not too difficult to leap, knowing you want to give back and at the same time develop your own career, and at the same time have a mastermind experience. Because when you're with 10 or 12 or 15 other speakers, and you get to see each other speak, one of the things that we do when we're on our bus rides or at dinner, we'll go through each speech and say, okay, some free ideas. What's one thing you liked? What's one thing that you didn't like? If you could make something better, what does that look like? And so after you've given a couple programs on this tour, you're like, okay, those are great ideas, and hopefully you'll become a better speaker because of it. And then you get a little, tourism, and you feel safe, and you're in another country, and you get a chance to, really see a country in a different way. And then there's always on every tour, you said, I think you started to say, and then I think you did say, actually, give me a little inspiration or tell me a story or something. I mean, all these tours have their own magic. I think the magic in this particular tour, and there was, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5, or, and it's different for everybody as they reflect on it, what was the most special night or special day for them. But I think collectively in this last tour, we did something we hadn't done before. We worked with a group of refugees out of Malaysia, but it's easy to get into Malaysia as a refugee. So they'll flee Sudan or Somalia or Afghanistan. But once you're there, it's not easy. It's really not easy to live. The government, you can't go to government schools. You can't really work. So you kind of have to work under the radar. And so we support a school that 250 kids go, refugee kids go in the morning, and 250 kids go in the afternoon. And we've been supporting them for about 6 or 7 years. And this particular year, we tried it something new. Janice Stanfield's been living over there now for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months, but she kind of goes back and forth. She started within the organization that we work with, MSRI, which is Malaysia Social Research Institute. Those 550 kids, she has a group of about 20 kids that also belong to Refugee Film School. And so Jana has taught them video editing skills, and then they get on Fiverr or what is it Odesk now? Is that what it's called? So that they have skills so that they can help support their families and their communities, really. So this year we tried a new program called Have Dinner with a Refugee. So we opened it up to the different families and teachers to bring a member of Together We Can Change the World into their home, as well as a MAPS member, Malaysia Association of Professional Speakers. And then we had dinner. So they cooked their traditional dish that they would in Sudan or Somalia or Afghanistan. I happened to have dinner at a Syrian refugee's home. And so the traditional Syrian meal. So, and anyway, in every story, all of us had, we came back that night and we shared the next day our stories. And I mean, it just, there, but for the grace of God go I, I mean, it's just so touching that, gosh, I mean, we are so fortunate, and then you look at what they go through to be a refugee, and sometimes refugees are looked down on. I mean, these are professional people. I had dinner with a man who was a CFO for a bank, and his wife was in real estate, and now he's working in Malaysia, kind of under the radar in a restaurant as a cook. And nothing wrong with that, of course. But he had a very professional life, and they're trying to figure out a way to move to another country. But it just tears away at you. And it was, and then we're all, you come away from that dinner and say, okay, what can we do? How can we? And then it led to a meeting with the head of UNHCR, which is the United Nations High Commission on Refugees, which oversees the whole refugees all over the world. So we did end up meeting with them and said, we need to, what can we do? How can we bring more refugees to the US or Canada or wherever we are? And so we learned more about the process, and I felt bad that I was more ignorant than I should have been about, how it all works. But that was just one touching story, but there's many on every tour, but that was a night that collectively it was a big impact for everybody.
Yeah, well, these people that are being trained and given skills, and you brought up the word Fiverr. If you were to supply me with some usernames or handles or whatever you call it for Fiverr, I'm sure that our Speakers Speak group participants, members, would be willing and certainly supportive to use those people in whatever they do. I mean, we're always wanting to make one sheets and do video editing and all kinds of things. So maybe there's some collaboration we can do there to support them in that.
I would love to I'll give you that information. That sounds great. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. So this isn't all you do. You do have an income that comes from other places of speaking. I always see a Facebook post from you that you just spoke at some other organization that's here in the States and all that. Why don't you just kind of give a little overview of what you do outside of all this philanthropic work that you do?
So when I speak to chapters of the National Speakers Association, or I just spoke in Malaysia to Malaysia Association of Professional Speakers at their national convention, I always start with, look at your perfect 365 days. I mean, as speakers, the great thing about being a professional speaker is our careers are tools to create whatever lifestyle we want to lead, a chance to hang out with the people that we love, and an opportunity to make a difference in whatever unique way we want to make a difference in the world. So it's really, I say, what does your perfect 365 days look like? What is your perfect 5 years, your 10 years? So as I ask myself that question, I want to spend 125 days a year in Southeast Asia. I want to make enough money to support my habits of my hedonistic tendencies, number one, and then be able to give something back and make sure that I'm working, I'm volunteering. So for me, 10 years ago, I made the decision to really shift from becoming a motivational humorist on humor in the workplace and, funny keynote kickoffs and closings and banquet talks to become more of an expert on how celebration impacts productivity and performance in the workplace. And the reason I did that was because then that would allow me to have a calling card. So I've written 2 books on this topic since then. It would give me a calling card to get into HR conferences around the world, especially in Asia, where then I can form relationships with the promoters so that then I can have partnerships and bring my buddies from around the world that are speakers in so that we could do these big conferences that allow other speakers to open up the Asian market, but at the same time, and most importantly, raise money for these causes. So for me,
it all ties together. It's like a big Yeti web.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, it's, knowing that I want to be in Southeast Asia. I love it there. I want to give back. I want to be able to wake up in the morning thinking that I'm making some kind of difference in the world, so that I can look myself in the mirror and continue doing what I'm doing and feel good about it. And at the same time, I'm living my perfect 365 days a year. So I think as speakers, it's okay. What does that look like for us? And whatever, whatever our cause is, whatever really calls to us, how can that fit into what it is that we do? And I've thankfully figured out a way to do it for me.
Right. Well, the elephant in the room question just came to me. Is your tour actually still looking for speakers, or did you fill those holes already with that? You said some people had to drop out of the roster, and what kind of people are you looking for?
Well, for we do 2 tours a year. So we'll go back to the Philippines in January. And so, we'll limit it to 15 people, and same thing next July, we'll go back to next year. It'll be Thailand, Malaysia, and Cambodia. So we're always looking for those 15 people. And, for me, the biggest honor, part of the honor of winning this Philanthropist of the Year is it brought attention to Together We Can Change the World. So it was a little easier to fill up these tours, hopefully with the highest quality of speakers. So, and we do, we attract a very top level of professionalism in our tours. So, so we're looking really for 30 speakers a year to come along with us. So every tour is different. And, but we've been very fortunate in not having to work too hard to fill those spots.
Do you encourage people to make contact with you, or are you more like the Speakers Bureau approach, where you'd rather go after someone that you discover and invite them to be part of the tour?
It's a combination. I started reaching out more to people that I really like and respect, that I wanted on the tour, and then I found out things like, well, how come you've never asked me before? I'm like, well, you just kind of assume it's like, it's like the guy in real estate who his neighbor ends up going with somebody else, and they said, well, what about me? Right. He goes, well, why did you never ask?
Hey, think a little broader, would you?
All you had to do was ask. I've been waiting to go on a tour. So it's a combination. I get we get requests all the time to come on a tour, but at the same time, I reach out to my buddies and I said, hey, you know what would be fun? I would love to share this experience with you, because it really is a special experience. And we like for instance, being in Cambodia, I got one of the ladies we work with there said to me, she goes, I got tons of contacts in Phnom Penh. Why don't we do a program in Phnom Penh, and we could raise a lot of money there? And I said, there's something magical about Siem Reap, Cambodia. I mean, that's where Angkor Wat is. It's one of the wonders of the world. It is an amazing tourist experience. It kind of reminds me of Bali. It has that same spiritual mojo about it. That Bali has, not quite to the level Bali has, but it's just an amazing place. And so, and we're limited in time, and we don't want to wear people out, which we do anyway. I mean, so for me, it's like, let's bring the Phnom Penh group, the community, to Siem Reap, give them a chance to have a couple-day retreat in Siem Reap. But we're very protective of those 10 to 13 days of what we do during that time, because it has to be a place that people really resonate with, that there's value as a tourist. And then our causes, even, I mean, I hate to say it, but as we look for our causes, if it's 4 hours out of town, yeah, maybe we'll give you a few bucks, but we're probably not going to come visit you, because it has to, we have a few, as speakers, we like to travel a certain way, and we all have our idiosyncrasies around travel. And you can read on Facebook about all the times the airlines didn't take good care of us, or we've had some horrendous travel experiences. So we really try to minimize the hassle factor of these tours. And I plan it with our team with that in mind, is, how can we keep the joy factor incredibly high on these tours, with the hassle factor as low as possible. So that's how we pick where we go, and really even who we work with. I mean, there's so many causes, so many good causes to be involved with. And so we choose those that don't have as much government support, or if any government support, and that are religiously inclusive or financially transparent, that want to create sustainability, so they're open to what that looks like for that particular cause. But there's a lot of those type of causes out there, so we've made the choice to choose those that also fit within our model of joy factor very high, hassle factor very low.
Right. That's awesome. Just two questions for you. I mean, I always look for what is the $1 million nugget, the one that's really going to put something in somebody's pocket if they apply what we're talking about. Every one of these, I always look for that one thing, and I think you've listed out about maybe 20 or 25 so far. I mean, there's really so many directions that this could go for a person, that they really need to listen to this 2 or 3 or 4 times and take some serious notes, and then go meditate on what you have heard and really put some thought into this, because I think there's a really important silver lining here of a future for all speakers who enter this business and who build their business, where to take that next. I just have 2 questions for you to wrap this up, and that is, number one, for someone thinking of starting their own organization, to do something that might be in parallel to what you're doing, just something that uses speaking to support a specific cause. What advice, have 21 tours and all these years of experience that you've had with this organization, what are a couple of things that you could supply to somebody as inspiration, gotchas, watch out for, anything along those lines?
First, I mean, back to the idea of, what is your 365 days, your perfect 365 days look like to you? And then, okay, once you have that, then, all right, what is the cause you want to support? And then how can you mix those? I mean, I haven't done a great job of talking about Together We Can Change the World in a way that's relevant enough to add value in my programs. I mean, I talk a little about it, but I mean, I look at like a guy like Doc Henley, who started from wine to water, or water to wine. I'm not, uh, an amazing speaker who talks about starting this foundation and giving back. And I mean, that's his speech. And so by the time you've listened to that speech, you're like, wow, where can I donate? How can I get involved in From Wine to Water? And I'd love to be able to say that I have that magic bullet for Together We Can Change the World. But I speak on one thing, that's how to celebration impacts productivity and performance, more employee experience, customer experience kind of thing. And then I mentioned Together We Can Change the World. I plant a seed. It's in my introduction. People do come up and talk to me afterwards. And we have had sponsorships come out of that or whatever, but I could do better. But I think for when you ask that question, I mean, it's really, making sure that you're making your money, because when we feel good about what we do and what those 365 days are, then we have so much more to give to other people. Mm-hmm. So figuring out what that looks like to you, and then, get like I did. I mean, I pretty much changed my focus based on the fact, okay, how can I really, as I get older, be more involved in the foundation? And that was really switching my topic so that it gave me the ends that I needed into these places and with these HR directors that could then make a difference and help our organization better.
Great. That's great. So well said. All right. Last question for you. How can we, as a speaker community, Speaker Speak group, how can we band together to support you? I'd love to support your cause. How can we help?
Good question. I love that question. I think you mentioned it earlier with coming on these tours. One of the things that we talked about is how can we create a better community? We've had over 100 speakers travel with us over the years, and we do have a speakers bureau that we provide. We do match speakers with organizations around the world, or mostly in Southeast Asia. But we haven't done a great job of figuring out what that community looks like. So as we build that community, we would love speakers to be part of that community, more of a part of that community, where they're going with us on these tours, as well as then giving their time. So especially during COVID, for instance, had a lot of speakers that when we went Zoom, then I could tap into speakers from all over the world to do these conferences. Yeah. So we sponsored lots and lots of conferences, just simply by, hey, can you do me a favor? This could be a good audience for you. Could you spend an hour with this audience? And hopefully there'll be some spin-off business, but basically we're sponsoring this conference. We were providing 2 or 3 speakers. So we still do some of that. So I would love to, get a note saying, hey, I'm happy to do that for you, and continue to wave the Together We Can Change the World banner. So that's one way. Of course, we're always looking for donations, or if you want to be a volunteer in social media, or help us wave that banner a little higher and further, that would be good as well.
Wonderful. How would you prefer that people reach you?
Email scott@scottfriedman.net is great.
Okay. Awesome. So many things we've covered. I've interviewed Scott before, and these conversations, it's like 4 hours crammed into 40 minutes. It's always the same. You offer so much value every time you answer a question. I just love it. And your candidness, your openness is so appreciative. You're like one of the rock stars of Colorado NSA. You've mentored us all, whether directly or indirectly. We so appreciate you, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring you out to everybody that is in this group, because everybody should know you, and you all of a sudden become their virtual mentor. Or maybe someday, if you meet Scott in person, you're in Colorado and he's in Colorado at the same time. What are the chances of that?
A lot of people stay at the house. It's kind of my house has been called a home for wayward speakers and authors from around the world. If you're traveling abroad and you're listening to this, come stay. I have a combination lock on the front door. I may not be here, maybe over in Asia, but just leave it like you found it.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time. This is Marty Dickinson with Speakers Speak Group, Speakers Speak Live. Always got to show that t-shirt. And you are listening to the $1 Million Nugget with Scott Friedman. So happy for you to be with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.